Hey everyone, and welcome to another Iron Workshop mod review. I've reviewed Millennium Dawn in 2019, and much has changed about the mod since then. So it's time to take a second look and see what has changed for the better and what may still need some work. Let's get started. Before I start this review, I would like to point out that this review is meant as constructive criticism. I know very well how difficult it can be to make a total conversion mod such as this. I have nothing personal against anyone on the Millennium Dawn team or the mod as a whole, and any critique I present in this review comes only from my experience of playing the mod and seeing it through the eyes of an outsider who is not a developer. So my understanding of the mod and its mechanics will be different. With that said, let's start with the graphics of the mod. Like other aspects of the mod, these vary from great to not so great. Among the greats are the tech graphics, which are superb, and in general the layout of the tech tree is clear and easy to understand. This is an aspect that some total conversion mods sometimes overcrowd, which oftentimes creates confusion in what you should research and when. But that is not the case here, so good job on that. Country leader portraits are also great, even for smaller nations, which was a welcome surprise. Most countries also have great portraits for their military leaders, although I'd wish they would clear up the backgrounds of these military leaders, since they kind of blend together when displayed in a list, and sometimes it's hard to focus on the information when there is a distracting background, which is not really an issue with a single country leader portrait where there is little important information to focus on. Another great aspect are the party icons, which are distinct and clear, which is very important for a player to tell them apart. Whoever did these deserves a medal for a job very well done. One aspect which is not so great are some of the focus icons, which use generic graphics from the base game, even in areas where you would expect to see a custom graphic. If this was a new mod, I would go ahead and shut up about it. But Millennium Dawn has been worked on since 2016, so seeing generic graphics in a major country's focus tree feels a bit weird, to say the least. Now let's talk about the world map. In my previous review of the mod, I had some issues with the map, and I'm happy to say that this is another positive aspect of the mod. The map looks great and is very detailed, with many victory points spread out where they should be. Even Africa, which is usually neglected in such mods, has been worked on significantly and has many states and provinces added to it, which really allows to simulate the various wars and conflicts there properly. Resources are also placed correctly, although I think that for gameplay terms it would be better to reduce the American oil reserves to make them more dependent on the Persian Gulf countries. Ideologies are also well represented on the map, and overall I have nothing bad to say about the map. As far as research and implementation, the map is very well done indeed. Moving on to gameplay, I feel that this is the part where my disclaimer at the start of the video will be most useful. The mod introduces an array of new features, but the problems with these features can be broadly divided into two categories: implementation and usability. First, let's talk about the economic systems and mechanics introduced into the mod. It is very clear why a mod like Millennium Dawn needs economics. In an age where direct military confrontation between countries is a thing of the past, economic warfare is no less significant. But there is very little you can do in that sense. Countries who are aggressive cannot be sanctioned properly, neither by the country you are playing or by some international organization like the UN. This is a point that I have talked about in my previous review, and I am kind of surprised that it's still relevant, but the logo used by the mod is a total misrepresentation of the mod. The UN is not represented in this mod at all. You can be as aggressive as you want, but no international body will attempt to stop you or do anything about that. It truly baffles me how a mod that has been so long in development has yet to implement some kind of a serious UN mechanic into it, when other mods where the UN is much less relevant have already done so. The economic aspects of the mod can be totally ignored by the player, which is ridiculous considering how much performance they require to keep them running. Performance is an issue of itself, which I will talk about separately. And if such a significant aspect of your mod can be totally ignored, then perhaps it is time to reconsider if it should be there in its current scope, or maybe it's time to rework it. Many countries in the mod will go bankrupt and will start begging the major countries to bail them out. It is a clear sign that the AI does not properly recognize the economic mechanics introduced into the mod and does not know how to interact with them. I suspect that the only thing that keeps the major countries from bankrupting themselves as well are some artificial bonuses meant to prevent that. You can invest in other countries, but the bonuses it gives you aren't significant enough for you to bother and actually do so. You can just continue and build up debt and go bankrupt, since it won't really have much of an effect on your country, so why bother? I also can't help but feel that a large chunk of the economic mechanics are simply not explained properly to the player, which further pushes them away from having anything to do with these mechanics. The devs have made an effort, but it simply isn't enough to actually care about the system. That is a real shame considering how much effort went into it. Another mechanic introduced into the mod is the ability to influence other countries. And in theory, the more influence you have, the more you can do with or to that country. In practice, it isn't very clear. The best result I got is that I managed to make South Ossetia my puppet after having more than 80 influence over them. But despite me having so much influence over them and them being my puppet, they would still not agree to a trade agreement. Which is weird, since it is a non-recognized country with whom in theory no one else would trade. So they should be begging for my trade, but no matter what I tried, they refused. No doubt the inspiration for this mechanic was Victoria's two-sphere system, but I don't know if it's a problem in how the devs have decided to implement their system, or if it's a Hearthstone 4 limitation that causes this thing not to work. But the bottom line is that it is another system which sounds great on paper and even has a good graphical implementation, but just doesn't do what it advertises, ultimately leaving the player confused and, in large, ignored. It is a real shame that the two most significant mechanics of Millennium Dawn don't work as they were probably envisioned to work. But the gameplay issues don't stop there. There is no doubt to anyone who plays this mod that a huge effort has gone into it, but it is shocking to see how it fails even in small things. The focus trees for all countries seem to be the same whether you're playing the 2000 bookmark or the 2017 bookmark, which creates some really awkward situations where the NATO'd 2004 and 2009 expansions are possible in 2000, and they're not completed if you play in the 2017 bookmark. Have you wondered what happens if you expand NATO so close to Russia's borders in 2000? Nothing. Nothing will happen, and you can be certain that Russia will not oppose to it, or even embargo those nations to somehow signal that they oppose this move. Factions are also a very strange beast in this mod, since they aren't factions like we're used to in the base game. As a modder, I know very well why you would want not to use the vanilla faction system, but this creates a situation in gameplay terms where these expansions have no real in-game effects. So while you are theoretically expanding NATO, in reality nothing really happens, and those countries that join are not in a faction, nor are they even guaranteed by the United States. Russia can also seize Crimea in the 2000 bookmark with, you guessed it, no repercussions at all. Maybe some economic sanctions? Nope, it goes smooth as butter. Another thing that really rubbed me the wrong way was the implementation of the September 11 attacks, that for some reason did not raise world tension at all, and did not even open any options for me to invade Afghanistan as the United States, or allowed me to somehow support my Afghan allies fighting the Taliban. Now let's be clear, bugs and other issues are part of any mod, but this mod has been out there for a long time. And for these significant age-defining events not to work properly after so much development time, it's hard to excuse. I don't know what the devs have been focusing on. Perhaps it's time to iron out the basic setup and then move on to less significant conflicts that also took place. There are other issues that I encountered, and event spam is also a plague in this mod, although I think it's a bit better than the previous version I reviewed, but you still get notified of events that took place that on a national government level you probably shouldn't really be bothered by. Before I conclude this review, I need to talk about the biggest issue with the mod, and that is performance. While my PC is not the newest one, it runs games like CK3, Victoria 2 and vanilla Hearts of Iron 4 just fine. It even runs Hearts of Iron 4 fine with large mods installed like Kaiserreich and Road to 56. But while trying to play Millennium Dawn, my PC could barely handle it. I often check Hearts of Iron 4 mods that are being streamed on Twitch, and for a while I wondered why the most downloaded mod for Hearts of Iron 4 isn't being streamed at all, like other mods such as Kaiserreich or Road to 56. And after completing this review, I got my answer. The mechanics introduced into the mod are also what kills the mod. While I am an experienced modder, I do not have a clear answer on whether mechanics such as these can be properly implemented without overloading the game. But it is clear that both playing Millennium Dawn and streaming is a luxury that only few can afford to themselves. And that is a real concern, since Hearts of Iron 4 is expected to have at least 3 more expansions. Every expansion puts its own stress on the base game, so any mods you put on top of these expansions will only make things worse. I hope that the developers of Millennium Dawn have a plan on how to improve performance in the long run, because if they continue this way, their mod will be unplayable, and no amount of cool features will change that fact. It takes my PC about 30 seconds to start the game with Millennium Dawn enabled, and an additional 20 seconds just to load the 2000 bookmark. While it may not sound like a lot, when you are doing this many times, it becomes very annoying to wait and wait and wait. Opening the tech tree also takes about 3 seconds from the moment you clicked on a research slot and the moment the interface actually loads. From the start, time ticks much slower than it does in the vanilla game, and it only goes downhill from there. This is the biggest issues with turning games like Hearts of Iron 4, which has most of its resources directed towards combat and equipment calculations, and trying to turn it into an economic simulator. It is imperative that the developers of Millennium Dawn understand that the performance issues in their mod are not some baseless whinings of people who have bad systems, but a core problem that must be resolved for this mod to be accessible and enjoyable to play. So how to conclude this review? Millennium Dawn is a very ambitious project with a very dedicated team who are putting a lot of effort and work into it. They are no doubt talented and the mod has great potential, but it's being held back by some fundamental issues that are yet to be resolved. My suggestions on improving the mod are as follows. First, reduce the reliance on the decisions panel. Navigating all the stuff that was cramped in there is a nightmare and throws up too much stuff at you. Spread out some of the stuff to other elements like scripted GUIs that can have a dedicated space to convey the information you want the player to know. Iron out the most significant and major events and countries and then worry about the smaller ones. By now the September 11 event chain should work flawlessly and should be a turning point for anyone playing as the United States, both economically and in their level of involvement in the world. Allow more troops to be sent to foreign conflicts. Proxy wars should be the main focus of this mod, and these will require more troops. Reduce event spam and information on a need-to-know basis. It's fine that some country I don't care about has formed a new government, but do I really need to know this if they're not a neighbor or if their government is friendly towards me? And maybe not allow everyone to ask me to bail them out, perhaps only countries I have 50+ influence with. Make separate focus trees for the 2000 and 2017 bookmarks, or at least finish the bookmarks that historically were done in the 2017 start to prevent silly situations such as a NATO 2004 expansion in 2017. Also, some of the bookmarks require the USA to be a faction leader, which is a requirement that will never be true, so probably shouldn't be there. Lastly, take a serious look at how the economic and influence systems are implemented and try to reduce the lag that they cause. So that is it. What do you think of the Millennium Dawn mod? Do you agree with what was said in the review, or did you have a whole different experience? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, leave a like to give it a boost and subscribe to the channel for future reviews. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.